So next week, our Zoom call will be with Mark's club, his old club from Mount Holly, New Jersey. And they're going to be talking about the Navio water project. That wasn't me. So we'll get that information out to you and how you can get on the call and hear all about it. I'm super excited to be able to.
The speaker will be the past president of Rotary Club in Arizona. And this is their third or fourth year on that project. And he's going to talk to us about how they've put it together and what a little more information about the need and hopefully what we can do. So get all that as soon as possible.
Okay, and then the last item that I have is we need someone to volunteer to be the contact person for Brunswick Community College for the scholarship fund. So if you would like to volunteer for that, please let me know. So that's everything that's going on right now. So now I'm going to ask Daryl.
You get a free lunch out of
Mark.
it. You get at least one free lunch out of it.
Free lunch?
Really?
Yeah.
There's much.
Okay, so at this time, this is all the announcements that I have. So Daryl, would you introduce us to Pauline?
Well, let's introduce our guests first, Karen.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did greet you all, but
Okay.
so on our call today, we have Mo Beers. Hi, Mo. Good to see you.
Hello. Hey, Mo.
We have Chris Stevenson. We have Marie Howard, who is the district governor. She's over the Raleigh area, I do believe.
District 7710.
7710.
Right, that's right.
And we also have Pauline Hankins.
And you also have Doug Wolf.
And Doug Wolf, where is he? See, I have to look for your picture. There he is. The Hollywood Squares. So at this time, Daryl, I think you should introduce Pauline.
Well, it's an honor to introduce the Honorable Pauline Hankins, who is a judge in the 13th Judicial District. And Pauline, I've known her family for 10, 13 years or so. I used to work with her sister. I had a great amount of respect for her sister and family and the family values that the Hankins represented here in Brunswick County. It was a pleasure a few years ago to work with Pauline on a couple of programs, the Juneteenth celebration that we had about 4 or 5 years ago, and did that for several years until Ola took it over, and I helped Ola Lewis a little bit. Pauline's area in the courts is, correct me if I'm wrong, Pauline, family courts. You concentrate mostly on family courts.
Yes.
And we are very blessed to have Pauline and her family in Brunswick County, and they have been here for at least 150 years.
Yes.
And she's going to tell you about some of her ancestors. So, Pauline, can you straighten me out and then clarify and lead us forward?
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you all for the invite, being a part of this. This is awesome. Yes, I am from the county. My great-great-grandfather came here as a slave back in 1840. I think he said, I actually have a letter that my grandfather interviewed his grandfather before he died. He came here to Brunswick County in 1843. It was sold at the slave market in Fayetteville. Brought here to Brunswick County. His last name was Hankins, which is where we picked up the name Hankins from. My great-great-grandfather, Zach Hankins, ended up, he was initially sold to a slave owner, which is now Sunset Harbor, but then somehow he got here to Bolivia, where I live, here near the courthouse. He had a bunch of children. There are a lot of Hankins descendants in this area. We are broad. And on that is on my dad's side. On my mom's side, they got here in like 1878, I believe. So my great-great-grandfather on my dad's side came to Bolivia in like 1873. And then my great-great-grandmother on my mom's side got here like in 1878. And my parents ended up meeting. So I am actually related to like everyone in Bolivia. My dad came from one side, and my mother actually came from the other side. There were 7 sisters who came down from Greenville like in 1878. They brought their husbands with them, and they started sort of the Bolivia community on one side, and my dad's side was on the other side. So I have about 2,000 relatives in Bolivia. I'm related to about everyone sort of Black in Bolivia, the Cedar Grove community, the Southport area. Some of my descendants went there. And so we're all connected. I actually have a family tree that we can all kind of go back and see how we're actually how we're all related. So this is home for me. And like Daryl said, we've been here for about 150 years, I think. So again, I have a lot of folks here. Juneteenth. Just want to introduce myself first. And my parents had 14 children, had 9 boys, 5 girls. I'm in the middle. So not only do I have a lot of cousins out there, I have a lot of siblings and nieces and nephews, and just a lot of huge families. I had an uncle who had 14 children. I had another cousin who had 14 children. So we just have a lot of folks in this area, in the Brunswick County area, from both sides of my family, mom's side and dad's side. Juneteenth, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Juneteenth. Has anyone ever heard of Juneteenth? Just kind of wave your hand. Anyone ever heard of Juneteenth? Oh, okay. So some people did. Well, Gerald, I know you've heard of it. So when slavery ended January 1st of 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Abraham Lincoln. There were many Blacks who remained slaves because they sort of didn't get the memo, didn't get noticed that slavery had ended. A lot of the white owners did not tell them. The last set of slaves to be freed, that was freed, was in Galveston, Texas, and that was 2.5 years later. That was June the 19th of 1865. From my understanding from history, federal government had to actually send troops down there to free those slaves because the white owners didn't want to recognize the Emancipation Proclamation. So June the 19th of 1863 is when the final act was done to free all of the Black slaves. And so in the Black community, we take Juneteenth as a day of celebration because we believe that was really that was the ending of slavery, when the last set of slaves from Galveston was actually freed with the help of the federal government. And so in the Black communities across the country, just like, and I'll just say this, a lot of white folks celebrate 4th of July. Well, back when the Declaration was signed, we were still slaves. So though we celebrate 4th of July, we were not free. Blacks were not free. We didn't really get our freedom until 1865. So for us, Juneteenth is like a day of independence, a day of freedom is what we call it. In some of the largest cities like Cincinnati, Ohio, they really celebrate Juneteenth big. I went up there last year for the first time actually to celebrate Juneteenth. I have a lot of cousins who live up there, and I actually went to like what I call to be a real Juneteenth celebration. They had a parade. It was like a 3-day celebration, a lot of different singers, and it was just really fantastic. I had someone dressed up as Abraham Lincoln, looked just like Abraham Lincoln to me. It was really neat to see him, and because he played the role of Abraham Lincoln. Again, he was the one who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So a lot of the ceremonies, celebrations, Abraham Lincoln is either mentioned or some sort of sayings from what he, from some of his famous sayings. So when I joined the Republican Party years ago, I had first mentioned Juneteenth, and I was but then later in 2014, when John Panula became chairman of the Republican Party, I asked him if we could do a Juneteenth celebration. I thought it would be very fitting for the Republican Party to kind of join in with the Juneteenth celebrations, because it was our first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who actually signed the Emancipation Proclamation. I wanted my folks, Black folks, to understand that back in the day, back in the 1800s, Blacks were really involved in the Republican Party. And I thought that would be a great outreach, diversity outreach project for the Republican Party. So I started the Juneteenth under the Republican Party with their support, with their help, and in an attempt to sort of just teach people about the history of Juneteenth and the connection between sort of back then the Republican Party and the African American community. And so it's been very successful. Every year we do scholarships. We start off doing one scholarship, call it the Juneteenth Scholarship. A couple years later we added on. Actually, the first year we ended up doing two scholarships. Daryl, I don't know if you remember that. Well, this year we decided to do a scholarship in honor of Judge Ola, to name one after her. She was very instrumental in Juneteenth in the Republican Party. So this year we actually did three scholarships: a GOP scholarship, Judge Ola scholarship, and a Juneteenth scholarship. We actually did the interviews just last Monday night. We had 9 applicants, and we've selected 2 of the 3 recipients for those scholarships, and we are excited about that. We had to cancel the banquet this year. We had a fantastic banquet planned for Juneteenth, but unfortunately, because of Corona, we decided just to cancel the banquet. But we decided to go ahead and give the scholarships anyway. So excited about Juneteenth. Any questions for me before I move to another subject? Any questions? Daryl wanted me to talk about Abraham Galloway. I don't know if you all have ever heard that name before. Has anyone ever heard of Abraham Galloway? He was an African-American gentleman born in Southport. Back then it was called Smithfield, back in I think he was born in 1857. Of course, he was born as a slave. His mother was named Hester Hankins. I'm assuming some distant relative of mine, or we came from the same owner of my family and his family, because his mom was a Hankins. His father was a white gentleman. His mother was African American. He was born thus as a slave on the farm, 1837. He escaped from Southport, I think at the age of like 19, and went north. Actually went to Canada, I think at one time, but then he came back to Massachusetts. But when the Civil War broke out, he was very instrumental in working with the Union during the Civil War. He actually was a spy because he grew up in the Southport area. He was familiar with the Southport, Wilmington area, my understanding the New Bern area, and he helped the Union to find spots to set up down here on the coast, African-American spot. He actually helped to recruit African-American soldiers for what they call the United States colored troops for the Civil War. It was Abraham Galloway who helped to recruit those African-American soldiers. And he, after the Civil War ended in 1865, he came back to Wilmington, North Carolina, where he settled, and he actually ran for Senate, North Carolina Senate, and was the first Black to post-Civil War, well, actually the first Black to ever serve in the North Carolina Senate. Frank Eiler said that there's a portrait of him hanging in up at the Capitol up in Raleigh, being that he was the first Black to serve in the Senate. He won in like 1868, I believe. Served in the Senate for just a few years, and he died unexpectedly. He caught some sort of I can't remember what it was, some sort of virus, and he died at the age of 33. And at that time, they said he had the largest funeral in history. It's 6,000, they believe 6,000 people attended his funeral in Southport. He had many accomplishments. Not only did he serve as a spy for the Union, and he was the first Black to serve in the North Carolina Senate, but he helped to form a lot of Black organizations in this area. He actually formed the Republican Party for New Hanover County, was instrumental in getting some Black civic groups started in the Brunswick County, New Hanover County area. So there's a lot written about Abraham Galloway, who was born right there in Southport, and at that time called Smithfield. Any questions for me on anything? Someone is unmuting the button. Daryl, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Can't hear you, Daryl.
Daryl.
I tried to unmute everybody.
Okay. Any questions for me from anyone?
This is Kent. I would just like to make a comment. I've been working with Pauline for the last 30 years on this Juneteenth, and she does an amazing job with the Juneteenth as well as everything in the community. So, all of her brothers and sisters, I met most of them, and it's a great family. Her whole family, can't say enough about her, and obviously her judgeship is is great. So I think she's following in Ola Lewis's footsteps. So thank you, Judge.
Yeah, Ola was definitely my mentor. So when I graduated law school in '94, I came back to Brunswick County. She was an assistant DA at the time. And then shortly thereafter, she became a district court judge. And then shortly thereafter, she became a superior court judge. But yeah, she definitely was my mentor going into the legal field. She was the one who inspired me to actually run for office. I was actually happy. I had a law office for 18 years, the law office of Pauline Hankins here in Bolivia. I enjoyed being in private practice, but she says, no, we need you on the district court bench. And so I decided to run at the at the pushing of Judge Ola. And so, yeah, but I'm so glad to have been connected to her. Yeah. Any other questions?
Pauline, tell Marie Howard is from the Raleigh-Durham area.
Okay.
And tell her where your brother's barbecue place is. It's got the best barbecue in Durham.
So listen, it's so funny because my mom and dad had 14 kids. So my brother had a restaurant, Daryl, but he actually is just doing catering now. I don't know if anyone has been to the little food truck down here at the intersection of 211 and 17.
Yeah.
That's my nephew. That's his son.
Oh.
Captain John Seafood. But yeah, I have family all over. I have 6 siblings in Raleigh. Daryl mentioned one of my sisters. She was a vice chancellor at Federal State at the time. She now works she's now a state auditor, and she loves that field. I have a sister who's a principal in the Durham area. I have a brother who's an electrical engineer. I went to NC State undergrad and got a degree in engineering. I didn't stay engineer. I went on to law school, but Lattimore followed in my footsteps, and he works as an electrical engineer. And then I have a couple that are just general contractors, just build houses in Raleigh. But I have siblings all over sort of the Raleigh area, the Brunswick County area.
Like the impact your family's having.
I'm sorry?
Quite the impact that your family is having.
Oh, yeah. Our parents just taught us to have strong values, to give back. I'm so glad they taught us to work. First of all of us work hard, but they also taught us to reach back and to give. And, we had to help our grandparents, which now, I'm grateful that my parents taught us to do that. We had to go and help them, whatever they needed help with, and help our aunties and our uncles and, respect people. And I'm just so glad that our parents instilled those values in us. It's just phenomenal. I look at young people nowadays and kind of just shake my head and don't know where they're going to end up on the road. Yeah, so grateful for that.
Most of them in your courtroom, right?
Yeah.
Marie, you are starting an e-club, a Rotary Club, and focusing upon justice issues. Do you have any questions for Pauline? Because she has a very unique perspective.
Yes, I'm honored to be part of this meeting today. My personal history is that in 1981, I was married to an African-American man for 10 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But that was 40 years ago. And I have sheltered myself in the fact that people do not know that. I decided to come out a week ago, and the impact has been scary.
Oh.
On many, many, many levels, and rewarding on many levels. As a result of the current situation that we're in at the district, we are going to establish a speakers bureau, and Ms. Hawkins, if you would like to be part of that, I would love to have you part of our speakers bureau. We're also starting this new club. It will be an e-club, and people from the entire world will be invited to join us people that are dedicated to make a difference in this difficult topic today. We
Yes.
are literally just getting this started. My organizational meeting is on Friday, but I have renewed my commitment to sticking my neck out and making a difference, because if not now, when?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I would love to be a part of that. There are some tough issues, a lot of conversations that I believe need to take place between the African American community, law enforcement community, to the judiciary, just sort of society in general. It's tough issues. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about a lot of different issues over the last 2 weeks. And yes, I would love to be a part of anything like that. Sheriff Ingram put together a race relations task force on last Friday. He brought together, he wanted to hear from the African American community first. So what he did, he brought together about 20 Blacks in the Brunswick County, in this county, that are in high positions, like the Black superintendent, the Black CEO, Linda Stanley of Doja Hospital, then myself, and then the president of NAACP, the president of Black Lives Matter, president of the civic organization we have here, the president of the Black Caucus, our Black clerk, our Black major deputy in the sheriff's department. He brought us all together, and he gave us an opportunity to say a few comments, and then he wanted to hear from us as to what we thought, to give some solutions and what we thought this we need to do to address these serious issues that are before us. It was some tough things said at that meeting, but yes, I do believe that if not now, when we got to do something. We've got to do something. You know, my take is so unique, and I can just say what I said Friday. I feel like I'm in the mix as an African American female judge, but then I work with law enforcement as a judge. So I have great respect for law enforcement, and I shared with the group there because I work in the system. And I understand the dangers that they face. I was sharing with them a personal story that I had. I don't know if you all remember Mitch Prince.
Mm-hmm.
I was good friends with Mitch Prince. It shattered me when he was killed. It was kind of devastating to me. Mitch was one of those officers. I don't know if any of y'all had a relationship with Mitch Prince. And for those of you that don't know who this is, he was a Bowling Spring Lakes police officer who was killed about 12, 13 years ago, stopped the car one night, and the gentleman actually got hold of his gun and shot Mitch with Mitch's own gun. And what I loved about Mitch was, I was a defense attorney. Mitch was one of those officers that if I went to Mitch and said, "Hey, Mitch," and this would be the typical scenario.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, somebody asking a question. This would be the typical scenario for Mitch. You know, you'd have a high school student leaving South Brunswick, going through Bowling Spring Lake, speeding. So I'd be like, Mitch, hey, let's let them sign them up for driving school, do some community service, write a letter of apology, and let's, kind of save their driving record, which was a great deal, because what I always, in representing young folks, I wanted them to learn something from the experience. So if you're driving fast, I want you to go to driving school, because I thought that was so important. And I want you to do community service. I always think community service is good for young people when they get charged with anything in the legal system, because they need to learn the importance of community service. But Mitch was one of those officers that every case, we just worked it out. And I loved him for that. And he didn't have no color, no black, white. It's just whomever. He didn't care. What can we do to help these young people? And again, he was killed. And so again, I've had a couple of law enforcement officers that was killed in the line of duty. That was devastating. But then as an African American, I certainly understand the concerns that my folks have. And when I say my folks, Black folks have. I grew up with 9 brothers. I'm in the middle of my 9 brothers. So I have 5 over me, 4 under me. And the 3 that I was in high school with are all brothers, not my sisters. I have an older sister, but we're like 7 years apart. But I was closest to 4 of my brothers, the one that were closest to me in age. And my goal even as a teenager, I don't know why. I didn't want them to ever get killed or murdered, or I didn't want them, acting crazy, anything like that, because I wanted them to stay alive. And so I used to have so many conversations with them about race, even as a teenager. I just remember having conversations, because not too many people can say they grew up with 9 brothers to grow up with 9 Black boys and to be so close to them. So I had that unique perspective. And just want to share this example. For example, I remember being in high school, and I was 9th grade. I had a brother in the 10th, one in 11th, and one in the 12th. And my brother and I was walking across the freeway at South Brunswick, and there were 3 white boys, and one of them said, "Hey, you nigger." And I never forget, my brother just lost it. Oh, he hit the kid, and Wade ended up getting suspended. The boys didn't get suspended because we didn't know which one actually said it. He heard the word nigger, and he just got so offended by it. When we got home, I was like, wait, I was so mad, you got suspended for 3 days. And my thing was, in an attempt to desensitize the word nigger, I started calling my brothers niggers. I did it only because I used to tell my mom, so that when they hear the word, they wouldn't lose it and just want to fight and just go crazy about it. It's just a word. I'm like, surely we're not niggers. I said, first of all, we're not unlearned or uneducated, or we're not poor. We are educated folks. We're very intelligent. We all have jobs. We have money. So don't be offended by what they call you. But I couldn't convince my brothers of that. So for about a year, I would call my brother, "What's up, nigger? Hey, nigger, you want to go with me, nigger?" In an attempt to desensitize the word nigger. So when they heard it, they wouldn't lose it and want to fight somebody. And after a while, it worked. We just started using it as a household word. "What's up, nigger? Want to go with me, nigger?" Y'all get that? So at an early age, I had to learn to accept racism. I had to learn to embrace it, because it is what it is. I didn't want my brothers to react to it. That when you get pulled over, kindly give them your license. I don't care if they pulled you over. When I had a brother who was 19 who got this expensive car, and he kept saying, "Oh, they keep pulling me over." I said, "Well, mine, it's because they think you sell drugs. You're a 19-year-old kid with a $30,000 car." He said, "I work 2 jobs." I said, "I understand that, but most folks won't understand why you got such an expensive car. You should have got what I got, where the time was like a little Ford Escort. You wouldn't be getting pulled over, because they don't think I sell drugs. I got a little Ford. But you have to go get this expensive car, and now they think you're selling drugs, and and that's why they keep pulling you." And I say all that to say this. I understand racism. I have learned to accept it and to try to help my brothers, now helping my nephews, to learn to just embrace it. That shouldn't be. But at the end of the day, what's most important for me is that they all remain alive. Nobody gets shot. Nobody gets killed. So saying all of that, I think everyone needs some education. I just think that, African Americans need to learn to calm it down a little. Law enforcement needs to learn to respect, and not make false assumptions just because, to be a little bit more, civil with the way they go about doing their arrests. It's just my personal take. Again, I'm in a unique position because I'm involved in both, involved in law enforcement, but then I got all these brothers and nephews and bunch of 2,000 cousins that are, apt to it. Any questions from me on that?
Pauline, I have a question.
Yes.
I have been always impressed with the lack of color sensitivity in Brunswick County. Here we all tend to treat each other as individuals.
I love that.
And is there a secret in Brunswick County that is not in New Hanover County?
I just believe, for whatever reason, when you go through high school, you pick up things. At South Brunswick, even back then, we had a lot of clubs that were truly integrated. Sports. I just think we got along for the most part. Like 95% of us got along, like blacks and whites. When you come out of South and North and West, you come out having a level of respect for those of the opposite race. I just think it's phenomenal the things that we learned, and we got coping skills for, when we were in high school. But I just think that as young folks, the thinking is different in this county. I just do. And I love it. I'm glad back then that we learned to get along with each other. We had a love and respect.
I think Libby has a question.
Okay.
I think I'm unmuted. First of all, when I have asked, I've been several places in this world, and I tell people the hardest thing about being a young white girl growing up in the South was not learning to love people different than you, but learning to love the haters, because that's how we evoke change.
That's right.
And so that's just one thing I would say. But I wanted to ask you, I understood before she passed, Judge Ola was working with a group on potentially getting the old Brunswick Hospital as a drug rehab center. Has anything come of that?
No, I don't think that's in the makings anymore. Yeah.
Shame.
Nope, I don't think so. But you are so right about that. Learning to respect the haters, and that sometimes can be very difficult to do, but I think it takes this end goal, you know, for me, it's like, okay, I need everybody to walk out of a situation, everybody is safe, you know? So when I go to speak, like at the NAACP, and I'm invited to speak at a lot of the Black churches, you know, I'm always speaking to young people to say, it's all about your attitude. You know, you get stopped, you get pulled, you encounter a situation, it's all about your attitude. You can either cause it to escalate or you can de-escalate it. And I'm always trying to encourage, you know, young people to be mindful, be respectful, be kind, and at the end of the day, you walk out with them in a much better position than you would if you you know, you sort of act up.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Chris, you have advocated that education is the secret to solving our problems. Do you have any questions for Pauline?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Speak up.
No. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I actually don't have any questions at this point in time. You know.
Pauline, you
Yeah.
can't see, but Chris, I don't know if you know Chris Stevenson.
I don't.
Okay, Chris is a Black fellow from New Orleans, and originally, and he feels very strongly about some of the issues that we're trying to address as Rotarians. And we feel that the 5 clubs within Brunswick County can take a lead and do some very constructive things towards solving the problems. I like what you said about education, and I'd like to follow on with what Libby said, because Libby talked about education, learning to love the haters. One of the things that I have always found is that you have to learn to hate. It is not a natural occurrence. We have to learn those kinds of things. Kids growing up, Black and white, they don't have any animosity towards each other. They have to learn it. And I think education is a key.
It is. It's so important. You know, we did a class about 2 years ago. Not all of the judges, North Carolina, we have to do this every year. We get together and do classes. And one of the classes was, what are you thinking about when you're thinking? And what they were saying is that we're sitting on the bench and we're considering whether to find a person guilty or not guilty. What are we contemplating? What are we considering? Are we considering their race, you know, their social status, their age, and things like that? And so, and the whole class was saying that a lot of times we have implicit biases that we're not even aware of. And it's because of how we were raised. and whom we were raised around, and that some of us have never had much dealings with someone of the opposite race. And the only dealings we may have had has been, maybe it had been negative. And so therefore, not even realizing that we could have an implicit bias against a particular group of people and not even be aware of it. And so it was a very interesting class, because we actually took sort of like a test. And it was interesting to see the results. And they asked us some very important questions at the end of it, and I thought was really good. They asked, for example, have you ever had dinner with someone of the opposite race? Have you ever invited anyone of the opposite race into your home? It's different from having, well, I work with Black people, I'm kind of Black people, I'm okay with Black people, but how close are you? And is your failure to form a bond with someone of the opposite race, is it because, you have sort of like an implicit bias against people of a particular race because of your lack of knowledge, of your lack of dealings, in order to, when I say knowledge, to get to know, it is to reach out to someone of the opposite race. Because it's so funny that evening, well, after the class, one of the judges said, I've never actually sat down with a Black person for dinner. Let's go to dinner tonight. So let's go. It's fine. I had no problem with it. So, and I said, they were saying that's how you kind of get over some of the biases against someone. You reach out and you get to know someone of the opposite race. And some people ask me, like, well, what difference does it make? And I don't care to get to know anybody of the opposite race. I've heard some of my friends say on both sides. I think it's good. God created us all differently, and I think we learn from each other. I'm so glad that I have great relationships with people of the opposite race, because I've learned things from them, and I hope that they've learned some things from me. God created all differently, so all of us have our strength, but then we all have our blind spots and our weaknesses, and I think other people can help us in more ways than we think. And if we could face that reality, that it is good to reach out, especially for those of us who call ourselves people of faith. I think God of the Bible don't see color, therefore we should not see in color. And if we do see color, then that goes to say there's something about us that's sort of lacking, So I encourage people to reach out and to embrace and to get to know and to, enjoy God's creations. It's beautiful. I mean, on both sides, Black, white, Hispanic, just enjoy people. I enjoy people. Have a great time. Let me tell you, in with this. So I lost my mother last year. She had died of cancer. For us, it was very heartbreaking for the 14 of us to lose our mother. But we left the hospital. She died early Monday morning. So they all came here to my house, and my sisters, we were back on my deck, and we were just so upset, having just lost my mother. Mike Ramos, who's an attorney, comes to my house and 30 minutes after we get here, and he comes to the door. All of the grandchildren were in my living room, and he knocked on the door. He says, "Where's Pauline?" And they said, "She's back there with her sisters." He proceeded right on in the back and came back where I was. He said, he just had to see me. And he was close to my mom because I worked with him for 5 years. After he left, one of my nephews who didn't know Mike said, "Aunt Paul, who is that white man?" I said, some of my white friends think they're my family. I knew some were going to come to the house. I was not surprised when Ramos came in like that. And so tell me this, I can't believe he just came back. When I told him where you were, I thought he was going to leave. I said, oh no, he was going to see me before he left. And I said to my nieces and nephews, I have great relationships with people, not just Black people, but just people in general. And I was not surprised that, that some would reach out like they did, during difficult times. But it just speaks volume, I think, as to who you're connected with, the kind of person who you really are. I have friends. I have Democrat friends, Republican friends, that unaffiliated, Black, white, poor, rich. I have all kinds of friends. So just a people person.
Pauline, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Okay, let me join. Is that the one that's going to be starting this e-group? No, that's not Howard talking.
Now, Pauline, I think you're going to receive 25 dinner invitations from the Rotary Club.
Yes.
Listen, I love to go out and eat. If y'all looking for a Black friend, that's me. Right, Karen?
And Pauline, we've got a pig picking coming up on the 24th at noontime on the airport from 12 to 2 on the airport hangar there with Howie Franklin's. And if you will, please join us.
I will. The 24th?
Yes.
Yeah, I have court that day, so I'll be in Brunswick County. I travel some days, with court, but I'll be.
Okay. Karen, you've got that invitation.
Yeah, I will send it out to you. Thank you so much for being here today. You are just
Thank
an
you.
awesome example to so many people here in Brunswick County. I didn't know your family was so big.
Yes, huge. That's why, Karen, when I ran in 2012, someone said, "Oh, you have no chance of winning. There's never been a Black elected first time on the bench in Brunswick County because Brunswick County is 84% Black. It's only 11% white, 11% Black, 84% white." And I said, "I got enough relatives. If I can just get my people to win this." I got
And don't forget,
2,000 underlining votes who works in. I got a relative in every building in this county. I just need them to get there and get the word out because my family, we're so connected.
Don't forget your brother who's the comedian.
Oh yeah, Al Sunder. That's right. Y'all met my brother LaSalle.
He performed at the Heart Ball this year.
Yeah,
that was him.
That's my brother. That's the brother that I'm closest to. We're only 16 months apart. He and I are very close. Yeah, huge family.
Yeah, I'm from a big family myself, and I just love it.
I do too.
So many brothers and sisters.
So many. All right, looking for a dinner invite from any of y'all who need a friend. Black friend, it's me.
I'd be first.
And Kent Wood, I want to come to your house. I've seen it. So hey, don't forget, okay?
All right, we'll get you over. We'll have to have a Juneteenth meeting.
At your house, Kent.
Okay.
His wife is
enjoy you guys.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you for being on the call today, and we'd love to have you in Rotary.
That sounds great. What you think, Darryl?
Pauline didn't come to Rotary because she thought we met at 7:00 in the morning.
And then he told me that was Kiwanis. He said, "That's what it's going to."
I wouldn't come if it was 7 in the morning either.
Oh. He said that was Kiwanis. That wasn't Rotary. I said, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you on our call today.
Good to talk to you, all of y'all. Hopefully I'll see y'all on the 24th.
Okay.
Hi, Pauline.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you, Pauline.
Okay. Karen?
That was wonderful.
All right. Hey, you're not muted, Leslie. Go ahead and talk.
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt some. I forgot to mention the plane rides, or what did we say, $25. So I wanted to mention that as a donation.
Yeah.
It was the one thing we forgot to say for the changeover.
Yep.
So we have a question out here from Erlene. She wants to know how to get to the hangar.
How to get what?
To the hangar.
Pull into the parking lot.
She doesn't know where it is. So
it's in the back of the airport.
Does not she know where the new terminal is?
She's gone now.
Yeah.
She had to leave. No, she wasn't sure.
Oh, okay. Just go down Airport Road and you can't miss it. And the hangar you have to go into the terminal. Howie wants you passing for security reasons. You need to pass through that terminal.
You know what? That should go in the invite then, that come through the terminal, because everybody knows where that is.
Yeah, well, they can't get in. They can't get past the fence otherwise. There are only 2 gates that they can get into to get to the hangar, and the food truck will use the west gate at west of the hangar. There's a flight school in there. And the rest of us will come in through the terminal and walk, 100 yards over into the hangar.
So you want Joe to deliver to the west gate?
West of the hangar, there's an entrance. West of the hangar.
Okay.
And there's a little white double wide trailer there and a gate that's just adjacent to the hangar.
Okay.
And remember, this airports are secure federal sites, and this one is particularly. So, security is something, and Howie is absolutely insistent upon this social distancing. He really is.
And Leslie, leave your gun at home.
Yeah, Leslie.
I don't own a gun. There's not a gun in my house. I only know how to skeet shoot, so. But someone said to me, if I'm a sergeant in arms, that they don't let you carry a gun, do they, Les?
Hilarious.
Mo, it is good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for the invite. I enjoyed this.
Well, listen, Nancy Barbie was on a call with us on Monday, and she was lushed over you, and she wanted to make sure that you knew that she was thinking about you and wanted to wish you well.
Well, thank you very much. And next time you see her, tell her I'm thinking about her.
She's on a lot of these Zoom calls these days, but that is I think our meeting today was very, very good.
I think so.
Yeah, I really like Pauline. She's a pretty awesome lady.
I enjoyed her the heck out of her.
I hope she.
I used to work with LaTanya. She's got a sister, LaTanya, that is an absolute beautiful, beautiful woman. And LaTanya was the comptroller there at the Fayetteville State when I was there, and now works in the auditor's office in Raleigh. So, Clay, are you okay?
All good.
You got all those sunglasses are awful dark.
Well, that's because it's actually very cloudy. We have a great view of Mount Mitchell, but you can't see it. It's all fogged in, sort of like this one behind us, which is a different mountain. But they tint automatically, and right above me is blue sky, although it was foggy all morning. It's been cool here.
Yeah. Well, are you anticipating coming home next week?
We're coming Sunday.
Okay.
This Sunday. So I'll be home. Glad to help move you in.
Well, you want me to tell Cecil to get your house ready?
yeah, get to mow one more time. I'm very fortunate that I have a neighbor who's very kind about mowing my lawn if I'm not there.
Yeah. Well, Cecil looks after the neighborhood, and actually his little dog Marley does an excellent job of keeping things in line. Mark, can you set up our Zoom meeting next week? And
I'm going to contact them right now, and they said that they would send me the link. So I'll be sure that I forward that as soon as I get it.
Okay. The link, I hope they've got room for several people. 49 is the limit on this new regular Zoom. 49 people.
How many people do they have, Mark?
That's a very good question. I don't know. Their club's about the same size as ours.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people regularly attend their Zoom meetings. I'll ask them. That's a very good question.
Because we've been averaging about 15 people each week.
Yeah, 15, 16 usually, yeah.
And I would definitely like to be on the call next week if possible.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna do that. Of course, their meeting is the same time as ours.
And if anybody would like, I can send out the video if you have not had a chance to see that about the water project. I have two videos, one from Libby and then one from Mark that I can send and share with you.
I'd be interested in that.
If you will send me the links to those, I can put them on when I send out the announcement of the recording of this meeting.
Okay, so as soon as I get off this call, I'll go ahead and take care of that for you.
It's a piece from from PBS. I think it runs about 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched it.
It's eye-opening. It's amazing to see. I mean, we just don't think about people in America living like that.
Yeah.
You know, there is a tremendous amount of poverty on those Indian reservations. I've spent some time out west, and it's mind-boggling because it's less than the poverty situations that we have in poor families here. And believe me, with I don't know if Mike Youngdahl is still on. He's not on the meeting anymore, but Mike was exposed to some poor people living in single wides here in the county, and he was shocked. But the Indian reservations are even worse than that. So,
yeah, I'll echo that, Daryl. I lived and worked in Albuquerque for 2 years, and we had a lot of employees that were Navajo, and the reservations were desolate. It's some of the most awful land you could possibly imagine. Something like 40% of the homes do not have running water. I mean, just think about that.
Yeah, that's.
And this particular, Mark started to say something, but this particular project puts in cisterns. Cisterns is just a place to store the water. It doesn't get the water to them except through rain and whatnot.
Well,
So,
they bring it in by truck.
by truck?
Yeah.
Right.
Which is fabulously expensive.
Without this cistern, they can, even if the truck comes, they can only deliver as much water as a family can hold.
Right.
And so if they have a couple big containers, then when those containers run out, if it's a couple gallons, then they have to have a couple gallons, and they only last a couple days.
Right.
Cistern, maybe they get a truck, and I'm assuming, but they look pretty big. Maybe the truck comes once every other week instead of coming every other day.
Mark, is the project for cisterns for a community or for an individual family?
It looked to me like they were for individual families, but the one family that is and they're in the video. They would most likely also be supplying water to some of their relatives who don't have cisterns. They might come to their home, fill up their jugs, and then go again. And this woman in the who was the first person that they talked to, or one of the first people that they talked to in the video, was going to her mother to get water. And she had a couple of little kids, and she and the children would go drive, 40 minutes to her mother's, get water, and then come back. And from the size of the containers, they were probably doing that fairly frequently.
Wow.
Yeah, watch the video. It really is interesting.
Doug, we're thinking about a district. Is it district grant, Karen?
It's a global grant.
A what? Global?
Global. Mm-hmm.
A global grant, partnering with the club in New Jersey. And if I remember, Mark, didn't you say that they had also had an interest from an overseas club?
They, the project that we did a couple of years ago, before it was probably more years ago than I want to remember. We did a project for Peru, the area around Lima, Peru, and we got a contribution from a club in the Netherlands. A connection made by one of our Rotarians who had been to the Netherlands and met some people there, and they raised some money. And if you get a little bit of money from a club, we also had money from a club in Peru, a district in Peru. So, once you cross that international boundary, then all the rules for how Rotary International matching your funds changes.
Right.
Everything changes. So if we can get, in this project, sorry, I touched my touchpad. There's a district in Mexico that is contributing to this. It really seems funny if you think about it that Rotarians in Mexico are helping individuals in the U.S. You would expect it to go the other way.
Well, that's the definition of a global grant, is that 2 or more countries are working together on a project. And
Right.
I would guess that 90% of the global grants that Rotary clubs in the U.S. are involved with are what we call outbound, meaning the project is happening in some other country outside the U.S. But, you know, we're trying to get more inbound projects like this one where we get clubs in other countries to help us sponsor a U.S.-based project.
Mm-hmm. Doug, I have a question for you too. I just real quick. My daughter-in-law sent me a news article about a young woman in San Francisco who organized a protest march sort of a thing, and people were amazed that this was put together by a 17-year-old kid, and she got quite a bit of local praise about that. Is there a protocol for reaching out? I mean, to a club in San Francisco and saying, "Hey, you know, do you know about this girl? Or you?" I don't know whether they do RILA, and she would have just aged out for RILA, but I know there are other scholarship kind of opportunities.
In very general terms, RILA, Rotaract, and Interact are all real big deals in California. I mean, there's an Interact convention every year, an assembly that gets thousands of students. Also, Marie, who was just on this call with us, Marie's the governor in the Raleigh-Durham area, is looking to sponsor a brand new Rotary club that's going to be focused on social justice. So Marie might want to reach out, but I will find the name of the governor in San Francisco and get that to you, and you could just
that'd be great. Thank you.
Contact him or have your daughter contact him. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Karen?
Daryl, as soon as I get that information from the other club, I'll send it to you, and you can send it to.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we have gone over. It's about 1:40. So
don't use that gavel. Don't use that gavel.
So let's end our meeting with the Rotary motto.
Service of ourselves.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
Bill, I'll give you a call.